So, we've had here today Simon Miller, thanks very much for coming to start with.
Thank
Author
you.
of To the Strongest, and now author of The King and Parliament.
Co-author of King and Parliament.
Co-author.
Co-author with Andrew Brentnall.
Okay, right.
Yes.
So, for those people who are foolish enough to not be familiar with To the Strongest, just tell us a bit about the core rules, because there's some very interesting things in there, use of cards, no use of rulers. So can you just give us some of the basics?
Yeah, for King and Parliament and To the Strongest both use a system where we play on a large gridded cloth. You can't usually see the grid. In fact, most people don't realise there is a grid on the cloth, but there's a gridded cloth. And we don't use any dice, we use playing cards. Playing cards turn out to be often hilarious when you use playing cards in a game. There's a lot of laughter and a lot of aces, especially when you don't want an ace.
So they effectively create a similar dynamic to a dice. So you're looking to maybe beat a 6 in the same way that you want to roll over a 6 on a D10. Something.
Absolutely, exactly. Effectively, we take the court cards out of the playing cards. We use those for something else. We create. We put 2 decks together, so you've got 80 cards, each numbered from 1 to 10, and effectively it's like 80 flat D10s. I think of them as flat D10s. They're more convenient than rolling D10s because D10s are forever getting cocked. The cards sit on the table during a round of play and are removed and shuffled at the end of it, so there's plenty of chances to take photos if you want to take photos without cards on the table.
Okay, so the original To the Strongest ancient medieval rules, you've now moved into the English Civil War. Is that a period that particularly interested you? Is it something you always wanted to do? Or?
It was one of the first periods I played when I was a kid. And in fact, I wrote my first set of rules was a set of English Civil War rules written when I was 10, which were absolutely dreadful. I can say that for King and Parliament, working with Andrew, we've produced, I hope, a very good set of rules this time round. It's a fascinating period. I remember as a kid seeing a lot of sealed knot shows. I loved the pikes going forward into their rugby scrums and the few horsemen dashing around the edges. And I loved the film Cromwell around about 1970. That's what really attracted me to the period. There's a lot to be said for it. It looks glorious on the table because something we don't have in ancients is the flags. In the English Civil War, they had many wonderful flags, a lot of which have been recreated to this day, and I've been putting as many as I can on the table. You'll see in the pictures there's 3 or 4 to pretty much every regiment.
Will To the Strongest players find it really easy to convert?
Absolutely. It uses all the mechanisms that they'll be familiar with. There are the activation cards, the same activation, moving, charging, shooting, rallying. The main difference, well, there are two main differences. One, there's more of a command structure in an English Civil War battle, and I think we've captured that for King and Parliament, where we have brigades instead of the commands that you'll be familiar with from To the Strongest. The other aspect that's quite different to the Ancients rules is that almost everybody has a gun or a pistol on an English Civil War battlefield. We have, when a unit is shot at, it shoots back, assuming it's not been wiped out. So there are musketry exchanges. Fresher units start off with ammo chits that enable them to fire with double effect. But they're typically the 2 lines will advance. There'll be a musketry duel. One side will gain advantage and charge, and hopefully it will rout the other side. And then there'll be the rout test that people are getting probably familiar with from To the Strongest, which could cause a single unit routing into the whole line collapsing.
So today we've been playing on an 8x6 board with quite a lot of figures on the table, 28 figures. Is that what people should be looking to do? We're creating big battles here, are we? Or how far small can we go?
It has to be said that when it comes to putting on a game, I am something of a megalomaniac, and I will cram as many beautifully painted figures as I can on the table. This isn't how most people are going to play it. Firstly, you can play for King and Parliament in any scale. I've played games with 6mm, 10mm, and 28mm figures. I've not played with 15mm yet, but all of these scales you can play for King and Parliament with, and the smaller the scale, the smaller the table. The smallest game we've played was on a 3 foot by 4 foot cloth. We played it on a table in a bar in a hotel over a couple of pints of beer. Very, very pleasant. The largest game so far has been this one you've seen on the... Oh, actually, no, the largest game was a 10mm game where we played on a larger battlefield than the one we use today. In general, you need... Well, you can play with any number of figures, really. Certainly if you're playing in, say, 10mm, 300, 400 figures, 10mm figures will be quite ample to play a game. And indeed, you could play the same game 28mm with 300 figures, 400 figures total.
Just a quick note.
Actually, you don't even need as many as that. Probably 250 would do it.
Okay, right. And just a quick note about the figures. So you've got a lovely collection we've been playing with today. Yeah. Who's the manufacturer? Is it mixed?
Almost all of the figures I was using today are from Bicorn. Bicorn have a lovely range of figures, many poses, all the different headgear that you'd see in the English Civil War. Fantastic collection of personality figures in that range. So I've particularly gone with those, but I've got quite a few Renegades mixed in. I've been using parts from some of the Warlord Games ranges. I mean, there are some terrific figure ranges out there at the moment. As it happened, I got some of my figures came from David Imrie, and they were Bicorn, so I pretty much standardised on Bicorn. But you know, there are some great ranges available in 28mm, and in 10mm, and in 6mm, and in 15mm. I mean, I was looking at some lovely Peter Pig figures in 15mm, Pendraken. Some of the smaller figures are beautiful. They paint up so well.
Yes, I mean, English Civil War is very well represented throughout the scales, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, and we can basically cope with a unit of any size. If you want to use really big units like I do, you just need to use a bigger grid. If you want to use with the smaller scale figures, you have a smaller grid, and if you're using the smallest grids, then you probably won't use the playing cards we were talking about. You'll probably use the chits from a draw bag. I sell the chits. In fact, I sell everything to do with the game: the markers, the cards, the cloths we play on with the grids on. I try and make it easier by supporting it.
Yeah. Okay. I noticed the interesting bases that you have on your units with the serrated edges, almost sort of jigsaw style.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is an aesthetic decision of my own. I realised, it dawned on me after about 3 years ago, after one of the competitions we'd organised, that because we're playing on grids, the units don't need to be perfectly rectangular because there's no measurement. So bases can be any shape. You could have a round base for a unit. It's more convenient to have a roughly rectangular base. But what I decided to do was to make elements up with what I call a wobbly edge. It's a series of curves that are computer generated, and the English Civil War units tend to have 4 stands. 2 shot on the sides, the pike in the middle, and a command stand that can fit either in front when you're advancing or behind when you're engaged in a firefight. And they all fit together in any combination. And having done that for the units and for the artillery, and the cavalry have a different structure. They're organised in troops of 6 or 9 figures. Having decided to do that, I've actually extended it to everything else. So my hedges have a similar pattern along the edge, and the figures fit into the pattern on the hedges, which is very nice. A friend designed these for me. So everything works together, and I'll probably need to do the same thing with roads. The great advantage of the wobbly edge, what I call the wobbly edge, is that when you chamfer the edge, the bases are made out of 2mm MDF. They have magnets, holes designed into them that you fit magnets into, so they can be magnetised for storage, for safe storage and transport. But when you chamfer the edge down, because it's wobbly, there are none of the straight lines you tend to see when you have units on a table. And because I've managed to match the flock to the colour of the mats that I typically game on, the figures kind of disappear into the cloth, and you're much less conscious of the gap between the figures and the table.
Mm. Okay, right. What's the publishing schedule for the rules? When can we get hold of a copy?
Okay, so the rules are written. I'm just doing the final proofing now, and they're going to go off to be laid out. I know that I will have them ready by Salute, because we're doing a big demo game, well, big participation game at Salute, so people can come along and try them out in action on the table there. Should look wonderful. It'll be a big game. It's possible I may have a PDF version available before that, and once I'm satisfied that I've got a good PDF version, what I'll probably do is put them up for sale before that with the deal, so that you can get the PDF version and then the print version, say the week after Salute. The print versions will go out the week after Salute. There'll probably be some for sale at Salute as well. I expect probably with Caliver, I'd imagine.
Okay, right. Simon Miller, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.